Hi, this is my story of the how and why I brought an old Sun workstation back from the dead. This all started when I saw this tweet from Foztex on Twitter. I'm a big fan of the Retrobattlestations subreddit, and they have these contests from time to time, and they were gonna have one here in June for Unix workstations. Now in the past I'd seen different fun contests like this come and go, and even though I always had intentions of participating, something ends up happening and I never do. But I was really hell-bent on trying to find my old boxes here and get them fired up and try to take a picture or whatever, to kind of enter them in the contest. Now, spoiler alert, I didn't make it in time before the contest was over. Now, before I get into the 2021 stuff, let me give you a little history, my personal history, I guess, with the SPARC gear. So there's pretty cool information here on the Wikipedia page about the SPARCstation 5 and 4 stuff, which was kind of wild. I hadn't looked at this in a while. It said the SPARC 5 rolled out back in 1984, and at the time it was like almost $4,000, which is probably more like $7,000 today. So that's kind of crazy. These Unix workstations were very pricey, and these were SPARCstation 5 and 4 were kind of like their I guess the SPARCstation 5 was a cost-reduced version of some of their previous things, and the 4 was basically like a 5 that was even more cost-reduced. And they had different CPU speeds and all, from like I think 75, 85, 110, and then there were some later ones that had higher processors, but these were the ones that I have. My 4 and 5 are 110 megahertz. So most of this stuff, the SPARC stuff I got probably like around 1999, late 99, early 2000. So it's kind of weird. The stuff that I hadn't put back on eBay years ago, the stuff that's left, I guess I've had over 20 years now, which is kind of wild for some of my computer stuff. None of my Commodore gear the first time around stayed with me. I ended up getting rid of it. So it's kind of wild that I've held on to this. It may have been more of a practical thing, like I wanted to make sure I erased the drives before selling them, and of course I never got around to that, so I didn't want to sell them until I had a chance to wipe the drives, but now I'm kind of happy that was the case, I guess. Now some folks always ask me, why did I get these SPARC, the Sun stuff? I guess I had this thing for getting and messing around with like quote-unquote real Unix workstations back in the day, even though maybe that kind of sounds silly now. There was this whole thing, I thought that, that this was like what the real hardcore Unix people used, and that's what I thought I wanted to be. And I mean, I'm still a big fan of Unix, BSD, Linux, everything. But that was the main reason. And other than these workstations, I actually had a SPARC LX and a SPARC IPC. And you can see those were the ones they kind of commonly called lunch boxes because of their size. They were pretty neat. And this really neat SPARC ELC, which is kind of like a CRT and a computer all in one. You can see there's a little SCSI drive there. I had my booting off of that, but I did the install over the network, which was kind of cool. I think those were usually kind of the idea when they were deployed or sold from Sun was like for them to be net bootable. Kind of neat. And check this out. You can see it in the background of the previous picture, but it's this little SPARC speaker box. I always just thought that was kind of neat. And I mean, to even show how much of a Sun SPARC nerd I was, look, I even had this bag. So yeah, you could probably say I had a slight obsession in my younger days with this stuff. I'm not sure if I thought I was going to get street cred, or by having this stuff and making myself use it I was going to get more skills. And I mean, maybe I did actually. I don't know. I wanted to be like some kind of guru, I guess. And seems like I've not hit that magical level that I was trying to get to, and it's been 20 plus years. Okay, so now back to the main topic at hand here about trying to get these two machines going. So these things had been in storage in this real dusty upstairs of my family's old hardware store for a very, very long time. And I had moved them at one point from that store to a house that we were at before our current home, and I'd never even turned the things on. And so they'd moved again. So these things have been moved twice and never even turned on. So, and a lot of my retro gear has been kind of brought in the house and messed with, but these things were like outside. Not, they weren't outside, but they were like in the garage / shed kind of thing. If you check this picture out, this is kind of, it's either the 4 or the 5 when I went to go find it to see if I could get these things working for this contest. So it was all dirty and dusty and just kind of leaning against the wall in the shed there. And just to kind of reiterate, or I guess repeat, whatever, what I said earlier, when I did get the SPARC 5 fired up, most of the timestamps on the files were like from around May of 2001. So this particular one, that's probably, I guess, the last time it was up. And in the process of doing this, I think I can remember maybe when it died or whatever, and we kind of swapped out what we had it doing for something else. So I knew I had my 2 workstations. I had power cords for them. They took, take the regular IEC style power, and but I didn't have a keyboard and I didn't have a mouse. I thought I had a keyboard somewhere, but from looking at these files I found now since then, I think I eBayed this several years ago. So I got on eBay again and purchased actually a kind of a new in box, new old stock SPARC, I think it's 5C keyboard, and the optical mouse that requires the the little metal or the patterned mouse pad for more than I wanted to pay, and more than I certainly paid back in the early 2000s for that kind of stuff. But it is what it is. So I got that in, and then some time ago I had purchased one of the 13W3 to VGA style adapters, and so then I went about finding a couple of LCDs that I had, because I know that sometimes certain monitors, I don't know if it's sync on green or sync on red, one of those two. Some monitors won't do that, but I had one that seemed to be like it wanted to work right. So I fired up the SPARC 4 and put the keyboard in there and the mouse, and it seemed to kind of work. And so I kind of left it alone and started messing with the 5, because it's supposed to be the cooler one of the not cool. I guess the 2 of them aren't as cool as some of the other stuff. I wanted to see if it would work, and it just was dead as a doornail. It did not want to turn on at all. So I ended up opening both up, and I had them on the bench there in the shed, not really my workbench, but I noticed that the power supplies looked pretty much the same, and looked at the model numbers, and they were. So I tried the SPARCstation 4 power supply I knew was good, so I tried it in the SPARCstation 5, and same result. It'd turn on for like a half a second, turn right back off. And so I took the one out of the 5 and put the 4, and it booted it up fine. So kind of that showed me that both those power supplies seemed to be okay. So we had some other issue going on here on the 5. I tried a bunch of stuff, and like removing any connections on the board just to see if I could get it to turn on at all, but there's not that much to disconnect. So I was getting kind of frustrated, and any of the Googling I did or looking around, nothing really got into the lower level board diagnostics. Everything was like, swap the board, which, I'm not going to do. But I think I was watching some other retro video, like with Adrian, like Adrian's Digital Basement, and it kind of reminded me of looking to see maybe if a capacitor was shorted on that board, because I've seen him do that a few times, and that kind of stirred that in my head, and I was like, I'll give that a shot maybe. So what I actually did was I got my multimeter and started checking the various capacitors on the board to see if I could find some that acted like they were shorted out, and I did actually. So I marked all those ones that were showing as a short with a little dot from a Sharpie, and then I came back around with my soldering iron and started lifting those up one at a time to see if the overall short would go away. And of course, like I mentioned in the other video, if you watched it, that was more to the point. It was the last. It wasn't until the very last one I tested was the one that was causing the short for that whole bus. Now looking back at, or actually a more recent Adrian Digital Basement, I could probably have paid attention to what some of the readings were, and maybe the capacitor that had the lowest resistance value was probably likely the one that was the real short one out of all of those that were in parallel. But I was just kind of going at it wild and fast to do it that way. But I'm going to put up a few pictures here kind of in sequence, and just let you kind of get an idea. Now this is very simplified, but if you can imagine how these are in parallel, on a given, like say a 5-volt rail or a 12-volt rail, whatever this rail was, I forget what it was. But this is a straight line. Obviously, they're not like that on the board. But as you can see, just one of these being bad can pretty much make all of a whole group of them look bad. So that was kind of slows you down for a second when you're trying to figure out the one that's shorted. But once I did find out the shorted one was there, I was able to lift that one up, and I attacked the other ones back down and put the power supply back in, and the system was able to turn on. Now, I'm coming back in here after the fact, and after I did, show that it booted up with this capacitor lifted, I wanted to go ahead and show where I actually had it replaced. That's where we took the old one off, and I'm holding the new one in place and trying to tack it back down here. So I just wanted to show, I just didn't leave it lifted and out of the way. So this is where I had actually brought it back inside to my real workbench, and I tacked down the new one. And that seemed to kind of work okay, and didn't really have any trouble. And after this, you'll see in a second where we are testing the, I can show you how the one shorted versus the new one. I have another spare new one to compare to. Oops. I can hold it here. All right, close it. Now, let me take out the, I had another new one here, so you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm not sure what made this other one mess up, but pretty sure that's when it got put in storage like 20 years ago. Now, let's see. Now this guy shouldn't do that. See? So that solved the first problem, getting the SPARC 5 to turn on. Now, what will we do? It booted on up into Solaris 7 and presented me, with the login prompt. And, it'd been 20 years or 19 years, something like that, since I've messed with this system. I had no freaking idea what the root password was or what any of my non-root accounts were on that thing. And yeah, I tried a few things and to no avail. Now, if you're used to like more modern Unix or Linux systems, you know how you can boot those in a single user mode if you have local access, and then blank out the root password, then hop back in there, reboot it, and then set it back. Yeah, you can't do that on Solaris. If you boot Solaris into single user mode, it still wants a root password. So that did not work within this situation. Now, this system didn't have a CD-ROM drive, and I didn't have any SCSI CDs around. And I could have probably rigged up some kind of net boot system, but I was not feeling that. I might mess with that a little bit later, but I'd done it before, and I remember it being kind of a chore and not something that I wanted to get into. The SPARC 4 had a floppy disk I could have tried to borrow, but I didn't have another system with a floppy. It was just like a catch-22 there, and I didn't want to go down that road of messing with a 3.5-inch floppy. So after Googling around a little bit, I found where these little SD to SCSI adapters were out there, and I figured I'd get one of those a shot. So I went ahead and ordered that. So while I waited for the SD to SCSI card to arrive, I decided to poke around with the thing, see if I could maybe brute force my way into it. I hadn't hooked anything up to the network on this, so I needed to find out if it was set to DHCP or had some kind of static address set. So I connected my Linux laptop directly to the Ethernet port of the SPARC 5, and I ran TCP dump to see if I could get any clues about what was going on. I was looking at the ARP requests that were being sent from the SPARC. So after, just a few seconds, I had a real blast from the past. I could see the address it was ARPing, or, trying to get answers for. And it was actually a directly connected internet address from way back all those years ago. And it really brought back, and I remembered now that this system had been like a tertiary DNS and a secondary MX host for some domains some friends of mine had. So now I knew what the address it had on it. It wasn't DHCP, but I knew what the address was. So I was able to put an address in that range on my Linux laptop. And I ran nmap from the Linux laptop against the IP of the SPARC to see what was running. And I could only see that DNS bind and SSH were listening. So I looked around for those versions to see if there's any kind of remote root exploit for the versions and did not see anything, so I was kind of out of luck there. I was going to see if I could remotely root, get into the thing, but didn't seem to have any options for doing that. But now that I knew I could SSH to it, I knew that I may be able to brute force SSH and just let it try some things, you know, overnight or whatever, or over multiple nights and see what happened. I just wasn't sure what the usernames were on the thing, and I wasn't sure if it would allow root, because usually, you know, that's not something you want to do. But I didn't know what my personal account even was on the thing. But what I did learn about was that there was this old exploit for OpenSSH for versions before 7.7. And it was pretty neat. It was a way to enumerate users just based on the timing of how the permission denied messages were sent back from OpenSSH. So basically, you could pass usernames to it in a kind of an automated function, and based on the timing of how it responded when it said no, it would basically tell you if that was a valid username on the system or not, which was kind of a neat thing to try. I felt like a script kiddie for trying this, but I fired up Metasploit, and the module, I guess it's under auxiliary scanner SSH enum users, and I tried some variations like on my name or some old usernames that I had, and ended up, it showed me, you know, that seemed like root was okay to try, and Jamie was okay to try. So I looked around for a tool that would let me try to brute force some SSH logins, just you know, just let it go there overnight and see if it would find anything. So that's when I found out about this piece of software called Hydra, and you can set it up and point it at an IP and just let it go to town. You can give it a list of usernames or just pass a username to it on the command line, and you can give it password files to try, or you can let it just kind of enumerate based on a pattern if that's what you want it to do. So I kind of let that churn and churn and churn with different variations, but yeah, I think it tried to do like 16. It could do 16 at a time, maybe less, concurrent login attempts. So it did quite a few, but that did not prove successful. So I just kind of left it alone. I let it run and to see, but nothing happened. So now, finally, the SD-SCSI card arrived. So now we're ready to rock and roll. And this device worked great. So what I did was I snagged a Solaris 7 install ISO, and I just DD'd this to the SD card that came with that that same little add-in card. And using some software that came with it, you could set the SCSI ID and software to what this card would look like. And basically, I took this over to the SPARC 5, and there's a 50-pin cable kind of already in there for if you ever did put a real CD-ROM drive in there. I connected it to that and connected it to power. And I fired it up and booted right into Solaris 7. You know, you can put the install mode can also the install ISO can actually be booted into like a rescue mode. And once I did that, I mounted the disk, and I was able to. I backed up the etc shadow file, and I blanked out the passwords for a couple of the accounts, including the root account. And once I did that, I rebooted back into normal Solaris and logged right into the thing with, you know, blank password, just hit enter, and I was good to go. It was really odd and kind of cool to log into the system I had not been on in so many years. So one of the first things I did was I took a snapshot, basically SCP'd, copied off a bunch of stuff to my same laptop I was trying to attack it from, just to kind of back up, and then I copied that to the NAS for posterity. Now, usually that'd be enough and I could go on about my business, but it was bugging me now about what those old passwords were, since I was going down memory lane. So I was thinking, well, you know, it'll be a lot faster than trying to SSH brute force. I can just try to attack these hashes. And this old system that these used, I think it's Descrypt on Solaris. I think it was limited to 8 characters. So, I mean, that's still quite a big thing to go through. But I figured I could kind of shorten it down a little bit. Based on some hints I might be able to give it, and see if I could just figure out what they were. So that's when I Googled around and found this software called Hashcat, which is pretty freaking awesome. I was able to take the hashes out of that shadow file from the Solaris box and let Hashcat chew on them. And the one for my personal account was laughably simple. I don't even know if it took 10 minutes for my desktop to crack that one. And it did not seem to have so much luck with the root one. I just wanted to know what the root one was. So I actually ended up, ended up spending some money I probably shouldn't have. I got an AWS instance with a bunch of, I think like a 16 core, 32, like 16 CPUs with with 32 core, and like 4 of those NVIDIA GPU cards that this Hashcat can really take advantage of to really chew through some stuff. So basically that's where I am today. I got the system back up and running, which is kind of cool. I got to look at some old stuff from the past and archive that, which was also cool. And now I'm kind of wondering what to do next with this thing, and maybe to get it ready for the next time to show it off on the Retrobattlestations. One thing I was thinking about that I kind of saw some different people doing this when I was looking around YouTube and trying to figure out how to fix this thing. It kind of goes back when I bought these guys in like late 99, 2000. I was always drooling over these Next cubes or Next slabs, but especially the Next cubes. It's so freaking cool. Wow, they were pricey. And I just looked now on eBay the other day, and there was like a really nice setup, and it looks like it actually sold for $5,100, which is crazy. I don't see myself getting a Next cube unless I get some kind of crazy deal somehow, but I doubt that's going to happen. So maybe a next best thing, I noticed that there was a version of NextSTEP that you could put on the SPARC, and of course those are out there. So I think what I may try to do next is get NextSTEP running on the SPARC. Might try to put it on that SD card. And another cool thing about that SCSI to SD thing, you can put like 4 devices on the one SD card. So I could actually have the install media and the actual OS disk in the same SD card on that same device. So I may try to give that a shot and see how that works. But if you made it this far, thanks for sticking with me, and I appreciate it. If you have any questions, let me know, and thanks a lot. Bye.